In my personal mission to try all of the worst night vision equipment and have the worst time possible, we have taken a short detour down to the bottom of the barrel for our IR laser unit. What we are looking at here is a plastic NGAL clone from our friendly neighborhood IP thieving CCP. Now this isn't even one of the quote-unquote good clones floating around out there. No sir, this is a bad knockoff of a knockoff that is really only a laser aiming module on paper. There are a bunch of different versions of these WASDN NGAL clones out there on Amazon and eBay, and you really need to be careful to not get tricked into buying the wrong one that doesn't have the features you want, but really you should avoid these at all costs. So what do you get for $100 or less? Well, mine was actually $130 from eBay, but it came with this Surefire knockoff light, and what I actually wanted was the dual button tape switch knockoff. On paper, this unit supposedly has everything that you need: an IR illuminator and a conjoined Viz laser and IR laser for easy zeroing. Now on that note, the IR and Viz laser aren't actually aligned properly, so you really do have to zero it with the IR laser at night, which is mildly annoying. Now the body is made from this extremely cheap feeling plastic, and the mount is also plastic, so I had to be very careful to only use the least amount of torque possible to not crack the whole housing. At this point in time, the unit hasn't broken yet after about 400 rounds, but it certainly will at some point. I've also had a Somogear PEC 15 suffer the same fate, but we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Now this video isn't sponsored by anyone, but some cool peeps did send me some stuff that I should mention. Noise Fighters, makers of the Pano Bridge, Max 14, and Cliffhang IR Riser, well, actually disregard that last one, they sent me two PVS 14s to play around with along with their night vision accessories, which was very kind of them, so for that I say thanks. Also, all of the night vision footage was filmed through a White Foss AGM unit sent out by Optics Force, which was also very nice of them. Now they ship optics to your door after a financial interaction takes place. Theoretical avenues of engagement of both of those sources are somewhere down below. Up front we have some clear flip covers that do nothing at all except offer some minimal protection of your front lenses. Moving back, we have our built-in fire button, which actually feels okay. I did use it when it was mounted on the old LWRC M6A1G, and it did work. It is a constant on function on my unit, but I'm sure other units out there may be different. Moving back again, we have our turrets, which zero our lasers at different targets, and surprisingly, over a few hundred rounds on different guns, they did hold zero. That is certainly not an indication of its long-term performance, as I don't recommend these units at all, so I don't think it's necessary to continue my misery longer than humorous. On the back of the unit, we have our CR123 battery compartment and our IR illuminator power dial. Not a focusing ring, but a power dial. That is for some reason marked the opposite of how it actually adjusts brightness. We also have our plug for our non-standard tape switch, which was my preferred activation method. Now I learned a lot about what I don't want in an IR unit from this device, so let's go ahead and start with the biggest functional problem, and that is the IR illuminator. This IR illuminator is about as unfocused as my career path at this point. It's basically just a flood of IR light that is borderline useless for anything past 20 yards. Even on maximum power, it's not particularly bright, and without a way to focus it down into a more usable pattern, it ends up just illuminating the ground in front of you, and not much else. Even a steel target at just 25 yards wasn't the easiest thing to pick up with the aid of the pathetically unfocused IR illuminator. So that alone makes the unit completely worthless to me on a rifle. It will get you through a house or a parking garage. Well, even that might be a stretch, but certainly any open space will be too much for the IR illuminator to handle. Now for the funniest part of the video, let's talk about the mode selector. Starting out with the IR side, we have number 1, Viz laser plus IR illumination, 2, IR illuminator only, 3, IR illuminator only in strobe, 4, IR laser only, and 5, IR laser only strobe. You can probably tell that something is missing from that list. That's right, there is no way to have the IR laser and IR illuminator on at the same time. They do exist, however, not in the same time and space, at least on this unit. It is either one or the other, or you can use the visible laser and IR illuminator, which, you know what, that's just kind of funny at this point. I deserve it, to be honest, for buying something like this. Now, in some of the footage, you will notice the laser and IR illuminator on at the same time, and that's because it's a Viz layer, not the IR laser. And for all intents and purposes, they look very similar under nods for the most part, so yeah, I cheated in some of the footage. That's the main point of a laser aiming module for most people, is to have some way to illuminate and identify and accurately engage a target, which usually requires both a laser and illuminator. Now for the IR illuminator only footage, I was using it as a passive aiming aid while looking through an Olight O-sight, which is not something that I recommend to anyone for any reason along with this unit. For the laser only footage, because the IR illuminator is so bad, it was actually easier for me just to use the laser by itself and not worry about the crappy O-sight at all. I was shooting in fairly good conditions, nearly full moon, very few clouds, so seeing a steel at about 100 yards that was half obscured by tall grass, or at least tall grass as in it's almost as tall as I am, was difficult but doable with just the laser alone. Now before we move on, let's go ahead and talk about the Viz side. On the Viz side, we have 1, Viz laser only, and 2, Viz laser only and strobe. Also briefly talking about the Unity knockoff tape switch, at least I think it's a Unity knockoff. It actually worked fine. It feels like cheap plastic, but the momentary buttons for white light and your IR device is a very nice thing to have in a very condensed package. Maybe I will get the real one when I have a real laser aiming module, but who knows at this point. A couple takeaways for me as I move on to the next step up the ladder of laser aiming modules is mostly 3 things. 1, I'm not interested in any IR illuminator that does not have some method of focusing it down to a usable beam. It doesn't need to be perfect, but it does need to have that functionality for me to consider it. 2, this is a little more obvious, but it's that the IR laser and IR illuminator must be able to be activated at the same time. Thirdly, because I am me and I tend to be somewhat hard on equipment, I need these devices to be made of some sort of metal so that just simple AR recoil doesn't destroy the unit. No plastic units going forward for any reason. Again, I've already broken a Somo Gear PEC 15 and I'm sure this one will fail at some point as well. Also, this should go without saying, but do not for any reason other than a joke or a troll buy one of these. This wasn't a cheap IR unit, this was a waste of 130 bucks. Get something that actually works. Now, a lot of people have recommended me the Roy Vivan GL4 Pro from Defense Distributed, I think. That unit doesn't interest me at all. There is no chance of me picking one up. Brassbacks and Forum R Ranch have already done really good videos on it, and from what I have seen, it doesn't do one of the things that I want. With my short time with flood-style illumination, I think they suck, and it's not really appropriate outside of a few niche scenarios for a rifle application. It also has a built-in light, which I don't really care about since I want to use it on a real weapon, aka an AR-15 between 11.5 and 14.5 inches in length, and it will already have a appropriately powerful rifle light installed. So for me, I think that unit would be a waste of money. Maybe it works for you in your circumstances if you have a good application for it, but again, not for me that wants to use it on a rifle. But go ahead and give me some alternative recommendations down below and I will see what I come up with for the next setup. But with all that out of the way, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. I will see you in the next one. God bless.